Okay, so after the class, I'll send you the recording. Okay. So those who are not able to join will can watch the recording and then think they'll be fine.
Okay, sure.
So let me start sharing. Okay, so this is week 2. We are supposed to do optimization, constrained and unconstrained optimization, but we are not going to use um, that mathematical tools now. So what we'll do is I'll wait till when we get to the face-to-face, then we'll do that because that one is a lot mathematics, so a lot of calculation. It's very difficult to do it here. Okay, so instead of doing that, and we are not going to apply it now, we'll apply it when we are doing market structures. So I will wait till when we come back to school, then we'll work on that one. So now we'll start with the theories and applications of demand and supply. So we're going to talk about demand and supply. We are going to talk about demand and supply and the market as a whole. So the learning outcomes will be, so at the end of this class, we'll be able to identify and explain the factors that influence consumer demand and producer supply of goods and services. Then we'll be able to distinguish between a demand curve and a demand function. We'll also be able to distinguish between a supply function and a supply curve. We'll be able to distinguish between um, movement along a demand curve and a shift in a demand curve, movement along a supply curve and a shift in supply curve. We also determine market equilibrium price and quantity, and we'll be able to use graph to show that. I believe you were taught those things in quantitative methods, but we'll still go through all those things. So those of you who have done quanti, it will be a bonus to you. Those who haven't done it, we'll still go back to it. So there's no need for you to worry. Then we'll calculate consumer and producer surplus. Then we'll describe what they mean to the society. Then we'll learn how introduction of taxes by the government affect the market. Then we'll also analyze the effect of non-price factors on the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is I'll introduce you to the cost, then we'll talk about demand. So we'll talk about the demand side of the market. Then hopefully next week we'll talk about the supply side of the market. So the theory of demand and supply are very useful in explaining what is happening in the market. So when we go to the market, we have two agents in the market. We have the consumers and we have producers. The third agent is the government, but the government will come in later when we are introducing taxes. But the basic agents in the market are producers and consumers. So producers are the people who sell goods in the market. So the producers are also known as suppliers or sellers. Then we have consumers. They are also buyers. So buyers demand goods and services in the market, and sellers supply goods and services in the market. So demand and supply analysis are both qualitative and quantitative. Sorry. Quantitative forecast tools which can be used to predict trends in the market. So for instance, if you go to the market and you're buying something like ideal milk, you don't only look at the price of ideal milk, but you look at the price of, for instance, peak milk, because ideal milk and peak milk are used for the same thing. So we can call them like substitutes. So if you're buying ideal milk, you look at the price of peak milk and you look at how the price of peak milk affects the demand for ideal milk. Okay. Then if you're buying something like kinky, you look at the price of fish. Okay. So kinky and fish are used together. So they are complementary goods. So they are used together. So if the price of kinky goes up, maybe you buy less of kinky and also less of fish. Okay. Maybe two balls of kinky satisfies you, and the price of you have 5 cedis. The price of kinky is now like 2 cedis per ball. So if you go to the market and the price of kinky is 2 cedis per ball, and you only have 5 cedis, you think that you have to buy less of fish, okay? And maybe you buy less of kinky too. Then also look at the prices of inputs prices, and how it affects the supply curve. So we have different, so many factors that affect the demand curve, and so many factors that affect the supply curve. So we are going to go into details, all these things. So the first thing we'll talk about is demand. So we'll define what is demand. This is one of my lines. Okay, so we define demand to be the ability and the willingness. So demand is the ability and the willingness to buy a specific quantity of a commodity at the prevailing price in a given period of time. So if you want to demand, if we are describing demand, but there are two things you have to take into consideration. The person who is buying the goods should be able to buy the good. So he should have the resources that will enable him to buy the good. And he or she should also be willing to buy the good. So if one of these things is not it's not available, then that person is not part of demand. So for instance, maybe you'll be willing to have iPhone 12, but your resources is not enough for you to buy iPhone 12. So what you are doing is just wishful thinking. You are not demanding the good, okay? You don't have the resources, you don't have the money, enough resources to buy iPhone 12. It means that you are only willing to buy the good, but you're not able to buy it. You don't have the ability to buy it. What you are doing is just wishful thinking. You are not part of demand. And then if you have money to buy a product, but you are not willing to buy the product, you're also not demanding the good. So you may have maybe 20,000 Ghana cedis, then you're not willing to buy iPhone 12 at maybe 9,000 cedis or so. Because of that price, you're not willing to buy it. So you're also not part of demand. So the person who is part of demand is somebody who is willing to buy the product, and he also has the resources to buy the product. So for instance, if if you don't have a pen and you are willing to buy a pen and you are able to buy a pen, you have the resources to buy a pen, then you will be part of those people who are demanding pen. Okay, in the demand, uh, in the uh, demand for pen, will count you as part of people who are demanding pen. So the demand for your commodity implies the desire to acquire it, your willingness to acquire the product, and your ability to pay for the product. So that is demand. So demand, you should be willing to get the product, you should desire to acquire the product, and you should also have the resources, enough resources to pay for the product. Okay. So that is demand. So we'll talk about a demand function. So demand function, we'll talk about all the factors that affect demand. So if you go to the market and you're buying a product, what are the things that what are the some of the things that influence your choice to buy a product? So economists argue that the demand for a product is a function of the price of the good itself. So let me type down one. Pressure, stop singing. If you want to sing, turn off your microphone. Okay. So demand function. So the demand for a good, so the demand for a good, quantity demanded, quantity, oh, quantity demand for good S is a function of, so when you go to the market, you look at the price of the good yourself. So you consider the price of the good. When you go to the market, you consider the price of the good. So you're talking about things individuals consider when they are going to the market to buy a particular product. So the demand for good S is a function of the price of the good yourself. If you're buying ideal milk, you will look at the price of peak milk. Okay. So you look at price of related goods because ideal milk and peak milk are used together. You will look at the price of an peak milk if you're buying ideal milk. You will also look at the price of Nunu milk, cowbell milk when you're buying ideal milk. So you look at the price of related goods. So for instance, if you're also buying if you're buying kinky, you look at the price of fish. If you're buying, for instance, shoe, you look at the price of socks. If you're buying a shirt, you look at the price of trousers. Or things that are used together. We also call those things complementary goods. So they complement each other. Things that are used in place of one another are known as substitutes. So you can substitute uh, peak milk with ideal milk. You can substitute peak milk with Nunu milk and stuff like that. So you look at the price of related goods. Then you look at your income, the amount of money you have in your pockets. So if you are going to the market to buy a product, you also look at your level of income. You look at your level of income. Then you look at then you look at tastes and preferences. So somebody may still want to buy ideal milk if the price of ideal milk is still high, the person will still buy the product. So they will say like, "Enye osikani yankuni plimani," okay, something like that. So if the price is still expensive, they will still buy it. Then you look at advertising. So we have two forms of advertising. We have persuasive advertising, then we have informative advertising. So there's some kind of an advert that gives information about the existence of a product. So if you haven't heard about the existence of a product, you wouldn't buy that product. So the demand for a good is also a function of advertising. Advertising helps you to get to know about the existence of a good. Then persuasive advertising. An advert can persuade you to stop using the product that you are using in favor of a new product that is being introduced or its competitive product. Okay, so like MTN will do an advert that people are running. So they are talking about data. People are running, and then uh, one uh, one person who is wearing yellow shirts will be first. So have you seen that Tigo advert about some guy he's eating, then he's eating too fast because he doesn't want his data to expire, something like that. If you have seen an advert like that, so that those are persuasive,
Yeah.
yes, persuasive kind of adverts. So it's persuading you to leave maybe your network and come and join their network. So those kind of adverts also influence the demand for a product. So if you see something like that, you may be enticed to go and use Tigo. So the moment you switch to maybe Tigo, then their demand will increase. Okay. Then we have number of consumers. So if you're a manager, you are not interested in an individual person's demand. You are interested in the demand for all consumers. So the demand for all consumers also affects the demand for a particular product. Then we have expectation about prices. So, as a rational human being, if you expect the price of a good to increase in the near future, like if you expect the price of a pen to increase tomorrow and you have the means, you buy more pen today, okay? You will not wait for the price of the good to increase before you buy it. You buy it now. So you buy because comparatively it is relatively cheaper today than tomorrow. So you buy more of the good today. So the expectation about prices also affects the demand for a particular product. Then we have expectation about income. Expectation about income. So if you expect your income to also increase in the near future, you wait till your income increases before you buy the products. Okay. Then there are so many things that affect the demand for a product. So, for instance, if you are talking about raincoats, it depends on the weather. If it is in the dry season, nobody buy raincoats in the dry season. You get it? And in the rainy season is when people buy raincoats. For umbrella, you can buy it during the dry season and the rain season because some people use umbrella for the main purpose of umbrella is even for the sunshine. Okay, it's not really for rainfall, but we use it anyway. Okay, so the demand for a product is a function of the price of the good itself. It's a function of price of related goods, the function of your level of income, taste and preferences, advertising, number of consumers, expectation about prices, expectation about income, and so many things. Okay, so that's a demand function. Stop sharing and share this one. Okay. So we defined the demand function for good S describes how X will be purchased at alternative prices of the good itself, its related goods, alternative levels of income, and alternative levels of other variables that affect demand, such as taste, expectations, etc. Okay, so the quantity demand for good S is a function of the price of the good itself, the price of related good Y, income, taste and preferences, advertising, expected prices, expected income, number of consumers, whether there are so many things, like I said, that affect the demand for a good. So this defines, explains these variables. Okay. So now we are doing managerial economy. So as a manager, you are more interested in the demand for the demand of the whole population than the demand for an individual person. So we distinguish between an individual demand and a market demand. So an individual demand is just a demand for one particular person. So for instance, if I am selling chocolate and I ask Fazer how many pieces of chocolate will he buy at a price of two, okay? And he tells me he will buy 3 pieces of my chocolate. Then I asked an additional person, whose name do I know? I'm going to check. Okay, so then I asked Abigail Quayson, that how many pieces of chocolate will she buy? And she at a price of two. And she tells me she will buy 2 pieces of chocolate at a price of 2 cedis. Then as a manager, I will not be interested in the demand for my chocolate of only Phaser, but I will be interested in the demand of chocolate for the whole market. So assuming there are only 2 people in my market, I think there are only 2 people in my market, then the demand curve for the chocolate, which is the market demand curve for the chocolate, is just a horizontal summation of the demand of Abigail and Phaser at that price. Okay. So at the price of two, Phaser is willing to buy three, and Abigail is willing to buy two. So my market demand will be five. I will not be interested in only the market demand of only Phaser, and I'll be interested in the market demand of, in the demand, in the individual demand of only Phaser, and I will not be interested in the individual demand of Abigail. But what I'll be interested in is the demand of the whole market. Okay, so the demand of the whole market. So for each consumer has his her own individual demand function for different products. However, managers are usually interested in the market demand function. So managers are usually interested in the market demand function. So individual demand function shows the variables that influence the quantity demanded of a particular product by an individual consumer. Okay. And the market demand function shows the variables that influence the quantity demanded of a particular product by all consumers in the market. So we are interested in the market demand of all consumers in the market. So our analysis that we are coming to talk about, we are coming to do, is not about an individual consumer, but we are going to talk about market demand. We are going to talk about market demand. We are going to, so if I want to find the demand, I want to find the demand of my chocolate in your class at the price of 2 cedis. I will ask each and every one of you, how much of the quantity will you want to buy at a price of 2 cedis? How much of the quantity will you want to buy at a price of 3 cedis? So afterwards, at each price, I will add all the quantities that all of you will be willing to buy at that price, and I'll be able to get the market demand of my chocolates of the class. Okay. In week 5, we are going to learn how to estimate a demand function. So we'll gather data, then we'll estimate the demand function by using statistical software. So we'll use either Excel or Stata, or if you have any software that you want me to. Yes, Nantoma, you raise up your hand.
Yeah, the question is like, you don't define the market demand like without bringing the word horizontal. Like we say that is a horizontal summation of the individual demands. I want to ask if you can define it like the total summation of the various demands of individuals without bringing the word horizontal. Is it possible?
It's possible. It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah. It's English. The way you write it for us to understand it, it's better.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now we should note that we have different forms of a function. Okay. We have different forms of a function. We have let me come here. We have different forms of a function. So we have something like a quadratic function. Okay. Do you know what a quadratic function is? Quadratic function. So a quadratic function is a function of this form. Y is equal to ax squared plus bs plus a constant. Okay. So the highest power of the so in statistics, y is a dependent variable. So y depends on x. Okay. So here, when it comes to the demand function, quantity demand is a dependent variable, and it depends on the price of the good itself, the price of related good, income, and all these variables. So all these variables are known as explanatory variables or independent variables, or you can also call them regressors. Okay. Then this is known as dependent variable because it depends on all these variables. So here, y depends on x. So s is our explanatory variable. The highest power of s is square. Okay, the highest power of s is square. If the highest power of the variable, the independent variable is square, then you have a quadratic function. If the highest power is cube, then you have a cubic function. Okay, the highest power is cube. Then you have a cubic function. So this can be as cubed. Then everything else can be like this. So this is a cubic function. Then we have something we call Cobb-Douglas function. Cobb-Douglas. So these are two individuals. I have Cobb and there's Douglas. So Cobb-Douglas function, you can have a function like z is equal to ax to the power alpha and y to the power beta. So this is a Cobb-Douglas function. This is a Cobb-Douglas function. Then we have functions like CS function, constant elasticity of substitution function. We have Leontief function. Then we have a linear function. Then we have a linear function. So a linear function, the highest power of x is 1. Okay, so if you have a function of the form y, you have a function of the form y is equal to as plus c. Y is equal to as plus c. So because the highest power of s, which is the exponential variable, is 1, then we have a linear function. And because for your level, we have different, like I said, we have different sorts of a function. But at your level, we are not economists. We are only introducing you to managerial economics. So you don't want to make things so difficult for you. Say the form of a function that we are going to use for our demand function and also for our supply function it's a linear demand function. We are going to use a linear supply function when you get to the supply function. So you are going to use a linear demand function and a linear supply function. So a linear demand function is a representation of the demand function in which the demand for a given good is a linear function of all the explanatory variables. Okay, so QSD is equal to beta naught plus beta SPS plus beta YPY plus beta II plus beta AA plus beta TTP plus beta EEP plus beta NEP plus beta CNC. Okay. Okay, so where the betas are known as constants or parameters, the betas are known as constants or parameters. So these betas are actually numbers. So when we estimate them, we'll get a number for this, we get a number for this, we get a number for this. The S, like I said it previously, sorry, the QSD, like I said previously, is a dependent variable. It depends on PS, PY, I, A, TP, EP. This is EI, so I'll make that correction, okay? Then NC. Then if there's any other variable that we had data for, we add that one too. So the PS, PYI are known as explanatory variables, independent variables, or regressors, okay? So we estimate the demand function by estimating these betas, beta naught, beta S, beta Y, and all those things. So if you did linear regression, you see when you have Y is equal to A plus BS, we have a formula for finding B and we have a formula for finding A, okay? So the summation S minus those things that I taught you last about, it wasn't face to face, so I wouldn't say whether you understood it or not, but you are still able to write exams and get A, most of you. So I assume you get it. But we'll also go through that next week when we are doing next 2 weeks when we are doing demand estimation.
All right, thank you, Doc.
Okay. So what we do is this beta. So as a manager, you are not that interested in estimating the B test, you can give it to your firm's research department, or you can also do outsourcing. Okay, so you can give it to an economic consultant to estimate the demand curve for your products for you. Okay, to estimate a demand curve for your product for you. So this is what we will do in 2 weeks time. But for now, we should note that we are going to use a linear demand function for all our analysis under demand and supply. Okay, for our analysis under demand and supply. So we can use simultaneous equations. Then when you're finding consumer surplus and producer surplus, because these are lines, we can have you can use the area of a triangle to find those things. We don't have to use integration to find the area under a curve for consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay, so we are going to use linear demand function, and the main reason why we are using that is it is very easy to work with. Okay, so after getting a demand function, we have to find a demand curve. So a demand curve, we find a demand curve from a demand function. So a demand function, so you know that a demand function, shows the quantity demanded of a good and all these factors that determines demand. Okay, so all these factors determine the demand for a good. When we are talking about a demand curve, we are talking about demand curve. So here we have a linear demand function as this. So let me write that. Linear demand function. So linear demand function QSD is equal to beta naught plus beta naught plus beta x PS plus beta Y PY plus beta I plus beta AA plus beta NC plus plus beta TP plus beta EP plus beta
EI.
is that
Beta EI.
beta EI. This should be different from okay. So this is a linear demand function. Okay. So now let's say we are coming to talk about a demand curve. Demand curve. So a demand function shows the relationship between quantity demanded of the good, the price of the good itself, the price of related goods, income, taste and preference, and all these variables. Okay. A demand curve shows the relationship between the quantity demand of a good and the price of the good itself, all things being
Equal.
Okay. So the demand curve shows the relation between quantity demand of the goods, so that is this, and the price of the good itself, that is PS, all things being equal. So this implies that the QSD for a demand function, QSD is a function of only the price of the good itself. It's a function of only the price of the good itself, all things being equal. So when you're defining the demand function, we only talk about, when we define the demand function, we talk about all these other factors that determine demand. If we want to talk about a demand curve, we are only talking about the price of the good and the quantity demand of the good itself. So a linear demand curve is equal to this. So this is how a linear demand curve look like. So QS is equal to B naught plus BS PS. So the demand curve just shows the relationship between quantity demanded of the good and the price of the good itself, all things being equal. So you note that a demand curve is a subset of a demand function. So a Therefore, a demand curve is a subset of a demand function. So if you have a demand function, you can actually find a demand curve by holding every other factor of demand constant and then letting only the PS vary, okay, as the quantity demanded vary. So now what we have to find is, so we know a demand curve, it shows it's a relationship between, it shows a relationship between quantity demand of the good and the price of the good itself, all things being equal. So we want to find the type of relationship between QSD and the price of the good. We want to find the relationship between demand and the price of the good. And this relationship between demand and the price of the good will help us to know what we call the law of demand. So what type of relationship lies between quantity demand and the price of the good? Is it positive or is negative? So before we can talk about that, we have to talk about something we call reservation price of a consumer. Reservation price of a consumer. Reservation price of a consumer. So the reservation price of a consumer is just the maximum price that an individual consumer is willing to pay for a product. So the reservation price of a consumer is the maximum amount a consumer is willing to pay for a product. Okay, so the reservation price of a consumer is the maximum amount a consumer is willing to pay for a product, the maximum amount he's willing to pay for a product. So different individuals have different reservation price. Okay, so if you go to the market and we are buying maybe, let me use a common example. So if you are going to the market and we are going to buy food, okay, then you go to Antiame's restaurant. Okay, why are you laughing? 1 million. Okay, so or you go to homemade. Okay, so maybe your reservation price for buying banku at Antiame's place, a plate of banku
It's been so.
Is that?
Antiama sells beans.
Rama, stop.
Okay, so if Antiama sells beans, okay, so if your reservation price, like I said, is the maximum amount of money that you'd be willing to pay for your product. So if your reservation price is for a plate is 10 cedis and you go to Antiama's place and the price of the plate is 12 cedis, there's no way as a rational consumer you are going to pay 12 cedis if your reservation price is 10 cedis. Okay, you only buy the product, the highest amount you are willing to pay for your product is 10 cedis. If you go and the price is 11 cedis, you will not buy the product. If the price is 9 cedis, you will buy it because that price is even lower than your reservation price. Remember I said your reservation price is the highest amount you are willing to pay for a product. So that is why when you go to the market, we have something we call price haggling. Okay, the seller will say, I want to sell it for 20 cedis. You will say, you will start from your below your reservation price. Okay, maybe you are willing to buy it for 15 cedis, but when the seller says he will sell it for 20 cedis, you will say, I'll pay 10 cedis. Okay, and the seller will be coming down, then you'll be going up. It will get to a price that even if the seller is not giving it to you, you will leave and you will not buy it. Okay, so that price is what we call your reservation price, the highest amount. So when you're going to the market, you have a preconceived idea about the price of the product. So when the price is above that price, you are not going to buy the product. That's what we call a reservation price. Okay, you are going to use this concept of reservation price to find the relationship between price and quantity demanded. And note that I said we are talking about the market demand. We are not talking about an individual demand. We are talking about the market demand. We're not talking about the individual demand. Okay. Asamoah, Precious. You are not talking, but your microphones are on, and you are doing something. Then it will be having feedback. Just off your microphone if you are not talking. If you don't have anything to say, off your microphone. Thank you. Okay. Moshadana. So I'll form a table like this. Let me add one. So like I said, we are talking about market demand. We are talking about market demand. So this is price, reservation price. For consumer. And this is quantity. Okay, so suppose the price of a good is 2 cedis. Okay, suppose the price of the good is 2 cedis. Then the number of people, the number of individuals who has so this is number of consumers with this reservation price. Okay. Okay, so suppose the price of the good is 2 cedis. Then one individual is willing to buy one individual's reservation price is 2 cedis. And assuming that each individual is buying one product, one unit of the product, then it means that at this price of 2 cedis, only one quantity will be sold because we only have one individual whose reservation price is 2 cedis. Okay. Assuming the price of the good falls to 1.5 cedis, and we have one other individual whose reservation price is 1 cedi, 1.5 cedis, then it means that at the price of 1.5 cedis, we'll be able to sell 2 units of the product because this person who has a reservation price of 2 cedis will still buy the product if the price is 1.5 cedis because the 1.5 cedis is even lower than his reservation price. So he even have some surplus, okay, if the price is 1.5 cedis. So assuming the price is 1.5 cedis, this individual whose reservation price is 1.5 cedis will buy the product, and then this individual whose reservation price is 2 cedis, will also buy the product. So we'll be able to sell 2 units of the product. Now, if at price of 1 cedi, we have an additional person whose reservation price is 1 cedi, then in the market, we'll be able to sell 3 units of the product. We'll sell 1 unit to this person, the one who has a reservation price of 2 cedis. We'll sell 1 unit to the one who has a reservation price of 1.5. I will sell an additional unit to the one who has a reservation price of 1 cedi. So we'll be able to sell 3 units. Then when the price is 0.5, for instance, and we have one person whose reservation price is 0.5, then it means that at the end of the day, we'll be able to sell 4 units of the product. The one with 2 cedis reservation price will get 1. One with the 1.5 will get 1. One with 1 will get 1. Then this person will also get 1. We'll be able to sell 4 units. So note that 7. Yes, Michael.
Hello, sir.
Yes, you said
Yeah,
you raised up
please,
your.
if there's the B, if the person have a reservation price of 1 cedi, will he be able to buy the good at the price of 1.5 cedis?
If the person has a reservation price of 1.1 cedi,
Yeah.
that person cannot buy at 1.5 cedis.
Yes, please.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
But then you said the quantity will be 2. The
Because
first person to buy.
I'm saying that if
Okay.
the price of the good is 1 cedi, right? Sorry, if the price of the good is 2 cedis, is it okay? And only one person has a reservation price of 2 cedis. So we'll be able to sell 1 unit of the product because the person who has reservation price of 2 cedis will be able to buy the good at 1 cedi. Sorry, at 2 cedis. So we'll only sell 1 unit of the product. Assuming the price falls to 1.5, and at 1.5, we have one individual whose reservation price is 1.5. So it means that that individual will be able to buy the product, right? And the person whose reservation price is 2 cedis will also be able to buy the product at 1.5. So we'll be able to sell 2 units of the product. Are you getting it, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if the reservation price is now 1 cedi, and then at 1 cedi, one individual is also able to, is one individual's reservation price is also 1 cedi, then it means that this person will be able to buy at 1 cedi. This person will also be able to buy at 1 cedi because his reservation price is 1.5. So it means that at 1 cedi, he'll be out of stop that. At 1 cedi, he'll be able to buy it. Is it okay? If the price is 1 cedi, the person whose reservation price is 2 cedis will even be able to buy 2 of the products. Okay, but we're assuming that they all need one unit of the product. So if the price is 1 cedi, this person will be able to buy at 1 cedi. The one with 1.5 will be able to buy at 1 cedi. The one with 2 cedis reservation price will be able to buy at 1 cedi. So at the end of the day, we'll be able to sell 3 units of the product. If the price is 0.5, then the one with 1 cedi will be able to buy at 0.5. The one with 0.5 will be able to buy at 0.5. So at the end, we'll be able to sell 4 units. So what this means is that as the price of the good is decreasing, then more people will be able to buy the product because it enters into other people's reservation price. Okay, so the price was 20 cedis. Then only one person will be able to afford it because that person's reservation price is 20 cedis. When the price comes to 15 cedis, then more people will be able to buy it at 15 cedis, right? Because there'll be a lot of people whose reservation price is less than 20, but it may be greater or equal to 15. So those people will be able to now be able to afford the product. Is it okay? When the price is falling to something like 10 cedis, then more people will be able to buy it now because now it is relatively more cheaper. And note that I said the demand curve you're talking about market demand, not an individual demand. So as the price of the good is falling, quantity demanded increases. So there's a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. As the price is falling, quantity demanded increases. As the price is increasing, quantity demanded falls because as the price is increasing, then we are going above other people's reservation price. So some people will not be able to afford the product if the price is increasing. So those people, their demand will fall. So as the price is increasing, quantity demanded falls. As the price is decreasing, quantity demanded increases. So you see, as the price is falling from 2 to 1.5, quantity is increasing from 1 to 2, from 1.5 to 1, quantity is increasing from 2 to 3, then from 1.5 to 0.5, quantity is increasing from 3 to 4. So the law of demand says that there's a negative relationship between quantity demanded and the price of the good, all things being equal. Is it okay? Salom, you raise up your hand. Salom. So do you understand this concept?
Sir,
You raise up your hand.
yes, what I was trying to say, you explained already.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So can I continue? Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the law of demand states that the quantity of a commodity demanded in a given time period increases as the price falls, all things being equal. And you see from the table, as the price is falling, we enter into other people's reservation price. So those people will be able to afford the product. Now the quantity demanded increases. As the price is increasing, we go above other people's reservation price. So some people will not be able to afford the product at a higher price. So those people, their demand will fade. So the quantity demanded of the good will be decreasing as the price increases. So there is a negative, hence there is a negative relationship between between price and quantity demanded. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So please, I still don't get it why you got the negative.
Is that?
I don't understand why you got the negative.
You don't understand
Can
why
you
I
please
got negative.
explain? Yes.
I should explain
Can
why
you
I got
please?
negative.
Yes. Can you please explain
How do you
further to me?
understand negative?
Sir, about the diagram.
Where's the diagram?
The
The
one you
table.
just, yes.
How do you understand negative? How do you understand negative relationship? Precious, I'm waiting for you.
Sir, so are you saying, sir, when
I said,
price
how do you understand? I'm not saying anything. How do you understand negative relationship? It's English. How do I understand it?
Yes, I don't understand.
You don't understand negative relationship.
Yes.
Then I can't help you.
Oh, sir.
You don't understand negative relationship.
Mm,
What do you mean by positive relationship?
okay, sir. So when the thing is increasing, to my understanding, it's positive, but decreasing is negative.
No, we are talking about relationship. So there are two things. There's demand and there's price.
Okay.
So if they are moving in the same direction, it's positive.
Okay.
So when price increases and quantity demanded increases, they are moving in the same direction.
Okay.
So it's positive. If one is
Mm.
increasing and one is decreasing, there's a negative relationship.
Okay.
So here, price is decreasing. but quantity is increasing. So there's a negative relationship.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Precious, should I go and buy some U2 for you? Huh? Yeah,
Pardon?
I'm listening. You raise up your hand. I'm listening.
Please, so does it mean that as price increases and quantity demand too goes up, that means that there's a positive relation between price and quantity, right?
So this one, are you talking about here or?
Say no, I'm just giving like based on what you said, like as price decreases and quantity.
Benedicta.
Say,
And I'm listening. You said?
I'm saying that, so does it mean that if price shoot up and then the quantity too goes up, does it mean that there's a positive relation between the two?
That's what I said. Oh,
Okay.
I'll beat you guys. So. Okay. Can I continue? Precious, are you okay?
Yes, please. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the demand curve is like this, okay? As the price is decreasing, so remember we said we have a linear demand curve. So linear means like it's a straight line, okay? So as the price is decreasing from P1 to P2, so P1, at the price of P1, there's a quantity that is being demanded in the market, Q1, okay? As the price falls from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2. And from this table, you see as the price falls from 2 to 1.5, the quantity demanded increases from 1 to 2, okay? So price is falling, quantity demanded is increasing. So the law of demand, as price increases, quantity demanded falls. As price falls, quantity demanded increases. There's a negative relationship between quantity demanded and the price of the good, all things being equal. So this implies that when you come to the demand function, the coefficient of price, which is beta s, is always negative, because the law of demand says that as quantity demanded increases, price falls. So as price is falling, quantity demanded will be increasing. As price is increasing, quantity demanded will be falling. So there's a negative relationship between quantity demanded and the price of the good. So this coefficient is negative, okay? So Q ds is equal to beta naught, and this should be negative. If you estimate your demand curve and this is positive, then it means that maybe you did some mistake somewhere, or you didn't collect your data well. But economic theory states that because of the theory about reservation price, we all do not have the same level of income, okay? And since we don't have the same level of income, we have different reservation price. Somebody who earns like 10,000 a year a month, and somebody who earns 1,500 a year will have different reservation price. Okay, so for instance, if the price of iPhone 10 is 3,500, it is even higher than somebody's income. Okay, so that person will not have that reservation price. So if you are selling iPhone 10 and reduce the price to 500 cedis, you see the number of people who will come and buy that phone. You get it? So it's like rational. You get it? So as the price of the good is decreasing, quantity demanded increases. So there's a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So you see, as the price is falling, quantity demanded is increasing. So we'll call this change the movement from point A to point B, which is caused by changes in the price of the good as change in quantity demanded. Change in quantity demanded. So change in quantity demanded occurs when there's a change in price of the good itself, all things being equal. And it is a movement along a particular demand curve. It's a movement along a particular demand curve. So change in quantity demanded, change in quantity demanded. Then remember, when we're defining a demand curve, we said the demand curve shows the relation between quantity demanded of the good and the price of the good, all things being equal. So we are saying that as the price of the good changes from P1 to P2, quantity demanded increases from Q1 to Q2, and this change in demand is known as change in quantity demanded. So now, what will happen to the demand curve if the factors that we had constant changes? So what happens to the demand curve if the quantity that we had constant changes? So quantities like price of the related good, income, taste and preferences, advertising, if they change, what happens to the demand curve? What happens to the demand curve if your income level changes? What happens to the demand curve if the price of related good changes? What happens to the demand curve if your taste and preferences changes? If advertising changes, what happens to the demand curve? So that's what we are coming to talk about. So if any of the other factors of demand, apart from the price of the good itself changes, the demand curve will shift. Okay, the demand curve will shift either upwards or downwards. So recall that there are other variables in the demand function that are held constant when defining the demand curve. And these other variables are income, price of related goods, advertising, and so on. Okay. So if these variables change, what happens to the demand curve? So changes in these variables shift the demand curve. So they shift the demand curve either upwards or downwards. So in effect, these other variables that influence demand but are held constant in deriving the demand curve are known as demand shifters. They are known as demand shifters. So if this variable changes, it shifts the demand curve. If these variables change, it shifts the demand curve. It shifts the demand curve. So for instance, so you notice that when we are defining the demand curve, we hold these variables constant. So if we want to find the effect of changes in income on the demand curve, on the quantity demanded, we hold all other things constant. So it means that we hold the price of the good constant, we hold price of related good constant, we hold advertising and all those things constant. So we are only going to look at how changes in income affect quantity demanded, how it affects the demand curve. And the theory says that if income changes, it shifts the demand curve. It shifts the demand curve either upwards or downwards. So in the next chapter, we are going to look at how changes in these variables affect the demand curve. Okay. So a shift in the demand is also known as change in demand. So there are two things. You have change in quantity demanded. No, so you have change in quantity demanded. And this change in quantity demanded is caused by changes in the price of the good itself. And this is shown as the movement along the same demand curve. The movement along the same demand curve. So from point A to point D is known as change in quantity demanded. Change in quantity demanded. If you talk about change in demand is a shift of the demand curve, either upwards or downwards. Either upwards or downwards. So if the demand curve shifts upwards, there's an increase in demand. If the demand curve shifts downwards, there's a decrease in demand. So this is the demand curve. Suppose this is the demand curve D naught. So movement from point A to point D, point A to point B is known as change in quantity demanded. And this is caused by changes in the price of the good itself. But if the demand curve shifts from D naught to D1, it has shifted upwards or rightwards, okay? Upwards or rightwards or outwards. So if the curve shifts outwards, rightwards or upwards, they call it an increase in demand. If it shifts inwards or downwards, we call it decrease in demand. So from D0 to D2 is known as decrease in demand. From D0 to D1 is known as increase in demand. Okay. Okay. So change in quantity demanded is a movement from A to B, which is caused by changes in the price of the good. And this is on the black demand curve. Change in demand is a shift in the demand curve from D0 to D1, which is an increase in demand, or D0 to D2, which is a decrease in demand. So this is caused by changes in the other factors of demand other than the price of the good itself. Okay. So now we are coming to talk about how changes in these variables affect the demand curve. So we are going to take it one after the other. So we are going to talk about income, price of related goods, tastes and preferences, advertising, population, number of consumers, so expected expectation about prices and those things. So that's what we are going to talk about now. So I'll give you three minutes break for me to find charger to charge my laptop. Then we'll continue. Okay. So I have 3 minutes break.
All right, sir.
Yeah, so
Try what?
Please, those who have unmute themselves, can you? Oh, mute yourself. Why?
Phaser, are they? Phaser. Phaser.
Dog.
I are they?
Dog. Dog.
I are they?
Dog, tell me yo.
Huh?
Dog, tell me you.
I are they? My are they?
Dog, me yeah. Dog, unye bibia.
Matty, I'm selling it. Fine. I was selling.
Dog, where baby?
Dog.
Oh, besides, I made the
Dog,
slice.
turn his head.
Ah.
Kibichiran.
That's for no
Dog,
slice.
what turn his head?
That's for no slice.
You mate. Mate,
Okay.
oh, forever.
Alright. So let's continue. Okay. Okay. So we are coming to talk about how the demand. We are going to investigate how these demand shifters influence the demand curve. So we are going to do it one after the other. So first, we'll talk about income. We'll talk about income. Let me see. Okay, so you recall that demand incorporates both willingness and the ability to pay for the good. So the demand of a good incorporates both willingness and the ability to pay for the good. So the ability to pay for the good will get that ability from your level of income. So the ability to pay for a good will get it from your level of income. So if income affects the ability of the consumer to purchase the good. So this means that changes in income will affect how much consumers will buy at any price. So before we talk about how income affects the demand curve, we have to look at the type of good that we have. So we have three types of good. One is a subset of the other, so we are not going to go into detail. So we'll just talk about normal good, then we have inferior good, and we have given good. But we are not going to details how given good reacts to income, okay? Because it's a subset of inferior good. So we're only going to deal with normal goods and inferior goods. We are going to deal with normal goods and inferior goods. So before we can know how the demand curve will shift if income changes, we have to first define what a normal good is, and we have to define what an inferior good is. So we are going to deal with how changes in income affect normal good. Then later we'll deal with how changes in income affect inferior good. So a normal good is any good for which an increase or decrease in income leads to an increase or decrease in the demand for the good. So what this means is that a normal good is any good when your income increases, you buy more of that good. An inferior good is a good when you're and a normal good is a good when your income increases, you buy more of that good. When your income decreases, you buy less of that good. So as an individual, for instance, at the end of the month, when you receive your allowance in school, the things that you buy more are your normal goods. When the month is getting to an end and your income is decreasing, the things that you buy less are your normal goods. So, for instance, if your allowances come and the type of food that you eat, so you see you have a lot of money, so maybe you go to Dimensa or places that the food is very expensive. So when you get your allowance, that's when you start eating at Baritas. So every day you go to Baritas and eat different kinds of food, tofu and other things. When your income is decreasing, when it's getting to the end of the month, then you start eating less of that kind of food. So in that case, food from Baritas will be your normal good. Okay, when your income increases, you buy more of that good. When your income decreases, you buy less of that good. Is it okay? And for an inferior good, when your income increases, you buy less of that good. When your income decreases, you buy more of that good. So getting to the end of the month, that's when you start eating antiames, rice and beans or red gobe. Oh, that's when you start eating gobe. That's when you start eating gari. So gari becomes an inferior good to you. If your income decreases, you buy more of gari. But if your income increases, you buy less of gari. So that becomes an inferior good to you. Okay. So your normal good is any good that when your income increases, you buy more of that good. When your income decreases, you buy less of that good. Okay. So there's a positive relationship between normal goods and income. So here, we are talking about the relationship between income and normal goods. So there's a positive relationship between normal good and income. There's a positive relationship between normal good and income. When your income increases, so I've told you, positive relationship is when the two variables are moving in the same direction. Okay, so your income increases, you buy more of normal good. Okay, when your income decreases, you buy less of normal good. So there's a positive relationship between income and normal good. Okay, so remember, we haven't said anything about the price of the good. Okay, your income has increased, so you're buying more of the good. We haven't said anything about the price of the good or the price of little good or any other thing. So we are holding all those things constant. So a normal good is when your income increases, you buy more of that good, all things being equal. Okay. Okay. So we are come to learn how the curve will shift if there's an increase in the income for a normal good. Okay. So suppose there's an increase in income for a normal good. The law says that for a normal good, when your income increases, you buy more of that good. Okay. So note that when your income increases, there's an increase in quantity demanded. Okay. When your income increases, there's an increase in quantity demanded because the good is a normal good. When your income increases, you buy more of that good. So suppose this is the initial quantity demanded and this is the price of the good. So it means that you'll be on demand curve D naught. When your income increases, you are now buying more of that good. So instead of buying D naught, you are buying more of that good. So now the good is now relatively cheaper for you because your income has increased and it's a normal good. So at the same price, if you're buying two, now you're buying three, okay, at the same price. So price is still constant, but you're now buying more of the products. So for a normal good, when your income increases, it shifts the demand curve upwards. Okay, it shifts the demand curve upwards, which is an increase in demand. So note that the relationship between normal good and income is positive. When your income increases, you buy more of the good. But we haven't said anything about the price of the good. So the price of the good is constant. So at the same price, if you're buying 10, now you're buying 20 units. So at the same price, if you're buying 10, which is Q naught, they are now buying 20 units at the same price. So that will shift the demand curve upwards. And the shift in the demand curve upwards is an increase in demand. I hope it's understandable.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So then for a normal good, suppose there's a decrease in income. For a normal good, suppose there's a decrease in income. And we say for a normal good, there's a positive relationship between income and quantity demanded of that good. So if there's a decrease in income, it means that you are going to buy less of that good. So if you're buying 10, your income has decreased. So now you're buying 5. Okay. If you're buying 10, which is K naught, your income has decreased. So you are now buying just 5 units of the good. So you're buying Q2. And because price is constant, it means at the same price, instead instead of buying 10, you're now buying just 5. So at the same price, you're buying 5. So the demand curve shifts inwards, which is a decrease in demand. So for a normal good, a decrease in income shifts the demand curve downwards, which is a decrease in demand. For a normal good, a decrease in income shifts the demand curve downwards, which is a decrease in demand. So there's a decrease in income, decrease in quantity demanded. With price constant, demand curve shifts downwards. So there's a decrease in demand. Is it okay? So for a normal good, if your income increases, it shifts the demand curve upwards. If for a normal good, if your income increases, it shifts the demand curve upwards. For a normal good, if your income decreases, it should the demand curve inwards, which is a decrease in demand. So I'll do a summary of that in the notes. Okay. So now we'll talk about inferior goods. Okay. So for inferior goods, an inferior good is a good for which an increase in income leads to a decrease in the demand for that good, and a decrease in income leads to an increase in the demand for that good. So for an inferior good, when your income increases, you buy less of that good, because when your income increases, you are busy buying more of your normal good. So when your income increases, you buy less of your inferior good. Okay. And when your income is decreasing, that's when you decide to buy more of your inferior good, because you are buying less of your normal good. Okay, so like I said, getting to the end of the month, when your income is decreasing, you buy more and more of your inferior good. Okay, but the moment you get your allowance, it's kind of boom on. So that's when you start buying flashy things. Okay, that's when you start buying your normal goods. Getting to the end of the month, that's when you start buying more of your inferior goods. Okay, so getting to the month, you buy more of your inferior goods. So here you see that there's an increase in income, but people are buying less of the good. Okay, less of the good. So there's a negative relationship. Increase in income, decrease in quantity demanded. So they are moving in that opposite direction. Increase in income, you are buying less of inferior good. Decrease in income, you are buying more of inferior goods. So there's a negative relationship between inferior goods and income. There's a negative relationship between inferior goods and income. So we look at how the demand curve will shift. Okay. Okay. So for an inferior good, suppose there's an increase in income. Suppose there's an increase in income for an inferior good. So initially you are on the D naught, demand curve D naught. You're on demand curve D naught. So suppose you're buying 10 units of the product. Suppose you're buying 10 units of the product. Now your income has increased. So you're buying less of the good. So your income has increased. So you're now buying just five. You're now buying just five. And at the same price, this shifts the demand curve downwards because the price is constant. When the price is P bar, you're buying Q naught. So there's an increase in your income and you're buying less of your inferior good. So you're buying less of your inferior goods. So at the same price, you're now buying less at the same price. So that will shift the demand curve downwards. So decrease in income for an inferior good shifts the demand curve inwards. Increase in income for an inferior good shifts the demand curve inwards. Increase in income for an inferior good shifts the demand curve inwards, which is a decrease in demand. Increase in income for an inferior good shifts the demand curve inwards, which is a decrease in income. Okay. So again, for an inferior good, suppose there's an increase in income, because there's a negative relationship between income and inferior good. If there's a decrease in income, you tend to buy more of your inferior good. So when there's a decrease in income, you are now buying more of your inferior goods at the same price. It shifts the demand curve upwards from D naught to D2. So decrease in income, there's an increase in quantity demand. So with price constant, this shifts the demand curve upwards. So we have an increase in demand. For an inferior good, if there's a decrease in income, we have an increase in demand. Okay, so let me summarize that one here for you in the next slide. Okay. Yep. So summary. Okay. Oh, sorry, I've written summary there already. So normal goes. So increase in income shifts the demand curve upwards. What is an increase in demand? So decrease in income shifts the demand curve downwards. It is a decrease in income. So for inferior goods, increase in income shift the demand curve downwards, which is a decrease in income. Decrease in income shift the demand curve upwards. It is a increase in income. Is it okay? I mean, the summary is good. Okay. That's
Yes.
right. Okay. So now we'll talk about price of related goods. Now we talk about price of related goods. We talk about price of related goods. So changes in the price of related goods generally shifts the demand curve for a good. So we can classify price of, you can categorize price of a related good into two particular goods. Okay, so you can have substitutes. So like substitute like ideal milk and peak milk, like ideal milk and Nuno milk, like Pepsodent and Close Up, Pepsodent and Mazam. I don't know if you know Mazam. Mazam was a paste. Okay, uh, we have Goyle and Total. They are all substitutes. Okay, then we can classify goods under also complements. So complements are goods that are being used together. So someone will say a phone and airtime, sorry, car and fuel, kinky and fish is a typical example. Paste and brush, a shirt and a trousers, or the American will say pants, stuff like that. Okay, those are complements, things that are being used together, goods that are being used together. So, so we'll talk about substitutes. Okay, so goods or services are substitute goods for each other if one can be used in place of another. Okay, so goods are substitutes for each other if one good can be used in place of the other. So the example of substitutes are ideal milk and peak milk, Pepsodent and Close Up. Then you can give other examples. So you can give examples about goods that you know can be used together. Okay. So this implies that consumers derive satisfaction from either good or service. So the same satisfaction that you derive from ideal milk, you get the same satisfaction from peak milk. The taste may be different, but they all perform the same function. Okay, they're all milk. Okay, Nunu milk and ideal milk, they are all milk. Or Nido and Carbell. Okay, or Carbell coffee and this way chocolate drink. Okay, can be substitutes. So therefore, two goods X and Y are said to be substitutes if an increase in the price of good Y causes consumers to increase their demand for good S, or if the other way around. So here I have to use I have to use something to explain to you. If I read it like this, it will become meaningless. Yes, so let me come back here to my whiteboard and do that. So substitutes. Substitutes. So I have x. So insert. So I have s. Then I have y. I have ps. Then I have py. So suppose the price of y increases. Okay. Suppose the price of y increases. Suppose py increases. The law of demand says that if price of y increases, quantity demand of y will fall, right? There's a negative relation between price and quantity demanded of a good. The law of demand, okay? So the law of demand says that if the price of good y increases, quantity demanded of the good will decrease. Quantity demand of the good will decrease. So this is because of law of demand, okay? This is because of law of demand. So this side is law of demand. Okay. So suppose good x and y are substitutes, then it means that those who are reducing their consumption of y, okay, those who are reducing their consumption of y will be consuming more of x, okay, will be consuming more of s. Those who are reducing their consumption of y will be consuming more of x. So quantity demanded of s will be increasing. So note that we are talking about relationship between price of y and quantity demanded of x. So you see that price increases and quantity demanded increases. So there's a positive relationship between quantity demanded of S and the price of S. So for a substitute goods, there's a positive relationship between quantity demanded of S and the price of Y. So the price of Y increases, the quantity demanded of Y falls because of the law of demand. As people are reducing their consumption of Y, they are now consuming more of S because they are substitute, because now S is relatively cheaper. And note that we haven't said anything about the price of Y. Okay, so price of S. Price of S is constant. So you see price of Y increases and quantity demanded of S increases. So there's a positive relationship between quantity demanded of S and the price of Y. There's a positive relationship between quantity demanded for S and the price of Y for a substitute good. That is, suppose good S and Y are substitutes. So suppose good S and Y are substitutes. There's a positive relationship between price of Y and the quantity demanded of S. So go back to our slides. So two goods S and Y are said to be substitutes if an increase in the price of good Y causes consumers to increase their consumption of good X. Okay, if there's a decrease in the price of good Y, it causes consumers to decrease their demand for good X. Okay, so there is a positive relationship between quantity demanded of good X and the price of substitute good Y. There's a positive relationship between quantity demanded of good X and the price of substitute good Y. So suppose there's an increase in the price of substitute good. Suppose there's an increase in the price of a substitute good. You know that increase in the price of good S will lead to a fall in quantity demanded of good Y. That's because of the law of demand. Okay. Since good S and Y are substitutes, consumers will substitute their consumption of good Y with good X. And this will lead to an increase in quantity demanded of good S. So you see that price of related good Y increases. And now people are consuming more of good S. Okay, so that shifts the demand curve upwards. So which is an increase in demand. Note that all that we're talking about, we didn't say anything about the price of good X. Okay, I didn't say anything about the price of good S. It was the price of good Y that changes, that increased, that caused demand for good Y to decrease. And when people were reducing their consumption of Y, now they see S, which is a substitute good, to be relatively cheaper. They rather buy more of X. Okay. Note that we've heard taste and preferences constant. There are some people, they will say, "Nye play man ya enyonkuni sikani, nye sikani yonkuni play man," something like that. Okay. So for them, if the price is increasing, they will still buy more of that. We are holding all other things constant. Okay. So we are only talking about the price of related good and the quantity demanded of the good, all things being equal. So the price of good S, income, taste and preferences, all those things are held constant. Okay. So you see that there's an increase in the price of substitute good Y, and there's an increase in quantity demanded of good X. So that shifts the demand curve upwards. So substitute goods behave like normal goods. Okay. Substitute behaves like normal good. Increase in price of income shifts the demand for a normal good upwards. Increase in the price of related good S, which is a substitute, shifts the demand curve upwards, okay, which is an increase in demand. So increase in the price of substitute good Y leads to increase in quantity demand for good S. So with price constant, demand curve shifts upwards. So there's an increase in demand. In the same way, if there's a decrease in the price of substitute good S, if there's a decrease in the price of substitute good Y, there will be an increase in the demand for good Y. That's the law of demand. As the price decreases, quantity demanded increases. So if there's a decrease in the price of good Y, there will be an increase in quantity demanded of good Y, the law of demand. And since people are now consuming more of Y, they find Y to be relatively cheaper. So they will substitute X for Y, okay? So they'll consume less of X and they'll consume more of Y. So you see, price of good Y has fallen and people are buying less of good S. So there's still a positive relationship. So as the price of good Y decreases, at the same price for good S, people are buying less of good S. So that shifts the demand curve downwards, okay? So in the end, decrease in price of good Y results in decrease in quantity demanded of good S. So with price constant, demand curve shifts downwards. So there's a decrease in demand, okay? So if the price of substitute good decreases, quantity demanded for good S decreases, and it shifts the demand curve downwards, which is a decrease in demand. So we'll do the same thing for complements, okay? So complementary goods are complementary goods are products or services that consumers use together, okay? The example of complementary goods are kinky and fish. Then you can give me example about shirts and trousers, or an American will say pants, okay? Okay, then shoe and socks. Even though not what?
Car and fuel.
Car and fuel.
Yes.
Those are complements. They are not like you have to use a whole lot of money to buy car. Fuel, you buy it small.
What about torchlight and battery?
Sir,
Yes, Ruth.
I don't think,
Brush and paint.
sir,
Yes.
Bread and butter.
I don't think shoe and socks are complementary goods because you can put on shoe without the socks.
Yes, we are talking about normal human beings.
What are you talking about?
You can put some shoe. That's all.
If you take off the shoe, you will see how
No be joke.
Okay, I like your answer.
Not the shoe, that the socks.
Yes.
I like this answer.
yeah, Ruth,
Sir.
you were saying
Let's continue.
okay. Let's continue because I think it's getting to. I have to finish this before we go. Okay. Okay. So two goods S and Y are complementary. If an increase in the price of good Y causes consumers to decrease their demand for good S, or if decrease in the price of good Y causes consumers to decrease their demand for good S. So let me go to my whiteboard again. So complements, okay? Complements. So suppose there's an increase in the price of good Y. The law of demand says that quantity demanded of good Y or 4, okay? And since good X and Y are used together, so complements, will buy less of good X, even though the price of good X has not increased or changed, okay? Will buy less of good S. So you see, price of good Y has increased, or you're buying less of good Y, good S. So there's a negative relationship between good X and complementary good, the price of complementary good Y, okay? So there's a negative relation between quantity demand for good S and the price of complementary good Y, okay? So complementary goods also behaves like inferior goods. There's a negative relationship between an inferior good and income.
Hold on. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes?
Daddy. Never hold on.
The person should mute the audio.
Now, Tom, I'm listening.
Sir, please. Sir, I'm not okay with the kinky fish.
Obisa said.
Example of complementary good.
You're not what?
Friday.
Sir,
Yes?
Today, no time.
sir,
Yes?
Someone is talking.
I don't know who is that.
Hey.
David.
Oh, who is the one making noise?
David. Now, Tom, I'm listening.
sir, I was saying that I'm not okay with the kinky and fish as an example of the good of company because someone can buy kinky without buying fish.
Now, Tom, I told you we are talking about rational people.
A
Rational
normal
people.
human being.
Charlie.
Now, Tom, we are talking about rational human beings, normal people.
Sir, okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so for complementary goods, there's a negative relationship between quantity demanded for good S and the price of complementary good Y. So suppose there's an increase in the price of complementary good. So increase in the price of good Y, like the example I gave in the whiteboard, it results in a decrease in quantity demanded for good Y because of the law of demand. Since good S and Y are complements, so they are used together. So consumers will reduce their consumption of good S. They are reducing their consumption of good S because they are reducing their consumption of good Y because price of good Y has increased. And this will lead to decrease in quantity demand for good S. So at the same price for the good S, people are now buying less of the good because the price of good Y has increased. So it will shift the demand curve inwards, which is a decrease in demand. Okay. In the same way, when suppose there's a decrease in the price of good Y, there will be an increase in quantity demanded for good Y because of the law of demand. Okay. Since good S and Y are complements, consumers will increase their consumption of good S because they are consuming more of Y. And this will lead to an increase in the demand for good S. So at the same price, because the price of good Y has decreased and the good is a complement good, people are consuming more of X. Okay, so that will shift the demand curve for good S outwards like this. Okay, so let me summarize this like the way I summarized this one. Okay. So increase in price of substitute goods. The demand curve upwards, which is increase in demand. Okay, increase in the price, decrease in the price of a substitute. Shift the demand curve downwards. Again, if there's an increase for complements, complementary goods, increase in the price for complements. A complementary good. Shift the demand curve downwards, decrease in demand, decrease in the price. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk about okay, so in that case, let me explain something to you before we continue. Okay, what's the demand function? Okay, so with the demand function, so remember I told you this sign is always negative because there's a negative relationship between quantity demanded and the price of the good because of the law of demand. And we illustrated this with the reservation price. Okay, for price of related goods, you see there's a positive relationship between a substitute good and the quantity demanded of the good. So if the sign of the sign of PY is positive, then it means that good S and Y are substitutes. If the sign of PS is positive, then it means that the price of the good S and Y are substitutes. And there's a negative relationship between complementary goods, a price of complementary good and the demand of the good. Okay. So if the sign of PY is negative, then it means that good S and Y are complements. If the sign of PY is negative, then good S and Y are complements. In the same way, there's a positive relation between normal good and income. So if the coefficient of income is positive, then good S is a normal good. If the coefficient is negative, then good S is an inferior good. Okay, I'll write that one later. Okay, so we'll talk about advertising, taste and preferences, and number of consumers. So they all have the same effects on demand. Okay, so you know that consumers must first desire to have or have taste and preference for a good. So when we're defining the demand for a good, you must be willing or desire to have the good. Okay, so taste and preferences also affect the demand for a good, and taste and preferences can be improved by advertising. Okay, nobody does adverts to reduce the consumption of its products. We do adverts. If you are in a marketing sensitive, advertising is very expensive. It's not nowadays that you can just advertise your things on WhatsApp. Even there, only your um, only your contacts see it. If you want to advertise your product on Facebook, you have to pay. You have to sponsor it, and by some sponsor, you have to pay so that it's reach a lot of people. If you don't sponsor it, only your contacts will see it. So if you're watching YouTube, you will see when you're watching it, then there's some kind of adverts on it. So five sometimes 5 seconds, then you can skip the advert, or you can watch the whole advert, then you continue what you are watching. All those things are very expensive. So you don't do adverts to reduce the number of consumers for your products. You do adverts to change people's tastes and preferences for your products and to increase the population of people who are buying your products. Okay. So advertising also improve number of consumers. So the effect of number of consumers on demand is the same as the effect of number of consumers on advertising and taste and preference, because adverts, like I said, we have two forms of adverts. We have informative, it gives you the information about the existence of a particular product. Then we have persuasive. That one, it persuades you from using a particular product and use that product. So like the example I gave you about the to go advert, I think it was too much. Too much. Who did the advert? Somebody was eating fast, and it's about data and expiring dates. Okay, so you buy data in 1 month, it has to expire. So getting to the end of the month, you have to use like try and finish the data before you buy it. And they were talking about their data not expiring and all those things. Okay. So that is persuading you to leave maybe MTN or Vodafone and come and join them, because when you buy their data, it doesn't expire. Something like that. Okay. So they do adverts in order to increase the number of consumers for your products. Okay. So I'll talk about number of consumers. So suppose there are 100 consumers and each consumer is buying 1 unit of the product at a certain price. Then all consumers will purchase 100 units of the product. Okay. So at this price, we have 100 people buying the product. Now, suppose there's an advert. Okay. You advertise in the product and it increases the number of consumers to 120. And if you assume that each consumer is buying 1 unit at the same price, now you are selling 120 units. So the number of consumers for the number of product that people will consume is 120. Okay, so at the same price, you are buying people are buying more of your product. Okay, so it will shift your demand curve outwards. So advertising, number of consumers, and taste and preferences have a positive relationship with demand. Okay, so as you increase advertising, as people's tastes and preferences increase, as the number of consumer increases, it shifts the demand curve upwards to the right. So that is a decrease, an increase in demand. Okay, so when it comes to the demand function, when it comes to the demand function, so taste and preferences, advertising is positive, taste and preferences will be positive, and number of consumers will also be positive. So now I come to talk about expectations. Okay. So finish with the expectations. I'll do an example, then we'll close. Okay. If your data is finishing, you can come back later. We'll record it
Yeah.
and we'll give it to you. Okay. It's not me. Oh. because I have to take my time and explain it, because within 2 hours, if I am to use exactly 2 hours, I won't be able to finish it. And I can finish it, but I have to talk fast. Okay. I don't have to take my time and explain things. So you should bear with me. I'm also using data. Okay. Nobody is buying data for me. I'm
Okay.
buying my own data. So we should all
Yeah, student.
sacrifice. And I'm what?
Lecturer.
Up to
So
8.
nobody is buying data for me. I'm using my own data.
Yes.
Yes. So I can
We are all
stop.
sacrificing.
Yeah, we are all sacrificing.
Teacher,
Yes.
teacher.
So let me continue. Okay.
Continue.
Okay. All right. So, expectation about future prices. Okay. So, like I said, if you expect the price of a good to increase in the near future, you buy more of the product today. Okay. And what we are talking about demand today, not demand tomorrow. So, if you expect the price of the, so again, we are talking about a rational human being. Okay. A normal person. If you expect the price of a good to increase tomorrow, so the price of a good is 10 cedis, and you expect the price to increase tomorrow to 15 cedis. If you have the resources to buy the good now, you buy more of the good now. Okay, you won't wait till the price increases before you buy that good. And this is only for durable goods, okay, goods that are not perishable. You don't buy uh, more bananas today because you expect the price of banana to increase. Because in 3 4 days, you see that it will start getting rotten, okay, and it becomes waste. So you buy more of durable goods. So expectation about prices and income is only for durable goods. It's not for perishable goods. Okay, so if you expect the price of a durable good to increase in the near future, you buy more of that product today. Okay, so at the same price, because you expect the price to increase tomorrow. So today's price is constant, but you expect tomorrow's price to increase. So you buy more of the product today. So that will shift your demand curve upwards. So at the same price, initially you're buying kill nuts. Then you heard that price of the good will increase tomorrow. Okay, then you're buying more of the products now at the same price. So that shifts the demand curve upwards. So expected increase in price in the future will shift the demand curve upwards, which is an increase in demand. Okay. Then expectation about future income. If you expect your income to increase in the near future, you will wait for your income to increase before you buy the product. So you buy less of the products now. Okay. So for instance, if it's getting to the end of the month and you saw something that you need, maybe you need 10, but the amount of money you have now will not be enough to buy 10. If you can buy all the 10 now, but if you buy all the 10 now, you won't be able to buy something else. Maybe you won't be able to even get money to eat. Okay, so you wait, buy less of the good now, then when your income increases, you can buy more. Is it okay? So when you expect your income to increase, you reduce consumption now and wait for your income to increase before you buy more. So currently the price hasn't changed, but you're buying less of the good because you expect your income to increase. Okay. So if you expected increase in income in the near future will shift the demand curve downwards, which is a decrease in demand. Okay, which is a decrease in demand. So that's all about the demand curve. So next week we'll talk about the supply curve. Okay, but we'll have to do this example before we leave. Okay. Okay, so we'll just use like 5 minutes to finish this. And I've already solved this. So we'll do this. We'll do the honors. So an economic consultant for S Corporation recently provided the firm's marketing manager with this estimate of the demand function for the firm. So remember I said the betas are parameters to be estimated. Okay, and we'll do that in 2 weeks and we'll estimate a demand function. So these are the estimated variables. Okay, so where QD represent the amount of good S, PS is the price of good S, PY is the price of good Y, I is income, and A represent the amount of advertising spent on good S. So suppose S sells for 20 cedis per unit, Y sells for 15 cedis per unit. The company utilizes 20 units, 200 units of advertising, and consumer income is 1,000. So note that the price of the good that you use is per unit. So if I give you two quantities of good S is sold for 400 cedis. If you are going to use the price for your analysis, you have to find per unit. So you have to divide 400 by 2 to get per unit. The price of good S and the price of good Y that we'll use for analysis is per unit. So if it is not per unit, you have to find per unit. Okay. In exams, I can give you a simple question, but one simple trick. Then I'll use 2 units of the product is being sold for 100 cedis, and somebody will go and substitute 100, and he'll get it wrong. Okay, it's per unit. So find per unit prices. Read the question well. Take your time and read the question before you start solving. So you see the question F. You see, then you get 0. Then you say they gave me F. No, nobody gives anybody any marks. Okay, you earn what you get. So if you get A, you get A. Nobody gives you A. If you get F, nobody has given you F. You have given yourself F. Okay. Okay. So the first question is, how much of good S do consumers purchase? Are good S and Y substitutes or complements? Is good S a normal good or inferior good? Derive the demand curve for good S and sketch the demand curve. Okay. So before you solve any question, you have to first extract the data from the question. I've been saying this. Before you solve a question, first extract all the data from the question. Then use that data you get from the question to solve the question. So in the question, you are given a demand curve. Okay, so the demand curve is equal to QSD is equal to 1,200 minus 3PS plus 4Y plus I plus 2A. Then we are given price, PS. Suppose good S sells for 20 cedis per unit. Good Y sells for 15 cedis per unit. So PS is equal to 20, PY is equal to 15. The company utilizes 200 units of advertising. So A is equal to 200 and consumer income is equal to 1,000. So I is equal to 1,000. So we have PS, PY, we have A, and we have I. Now, the first question says, how much of good S do consumers purchase? So this is the demand curve, and this is the dependent variable. So to find the quantity demanded, the first question, you just have to substitute for all the explanative variables. So you are given PS, PY, I, and A. All that you have to do is substitute for all the explanative variables, and you'll be able to find how much of good S do consumers purchase. Okay. So if you are able to estimate the demand function, you can find the quantity that you will be able to sell or the quantity demanded of your product in the market by substituting for all the equilibrium values of the explanatory variables that is given in the question. Okay. So what we do here is we substitute for all explanatory variables to find the number of S consumers purchase. Okay. So we have the demand is QSD is equal to 1,200 minus 3PS plus 4PY plus I plus 2A. So QSD is equal to 1,200 minus 3 times PS is equal to 20. So where you find PS, you put 20 there. Plus 4, PY is equal to 15, plus I is equal to 1,000, plus 2A, A is equal to 200. Then your calculator will be able to solve this. Okay, so this is 1,200 minus 20 plus 60 plus 1,000 plus 2,200. So there's a mistake in this calculation. Okay, so I think this is 260 something. 2,600 and this 2,600, right? It's correct. Okay, so this is 1,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is 2,600. Okay.
Yes, sir, it's correct.
So we have 2,600. Okay. The B part of the question says, are good S and Y substitute or complement? So I said, if you are talking about substitute or complement, you look at the coefficient of PY. Okay, you look at the coefficient of PY. So here we'll come to PY. The coefficient of PY is positive 4. Okay, So the coefficient of PY is positive 4. Then I said there's a positive relationship between substitute goods, okay? The price of a substitute good, quantity demanded of the good. So because the coefficient is positive, it means that good S and Y are substitutes. So they can be ideal milk and peak milk, okay? So just for this question, just look at the sign of the PS and you give us your answer, okay? So here you say, since the coefficient of price of good Y is positive, good S and Y are substitute. If it was negative, good S and Y would have been complement, okay? If it is positive, they are substitute. So the next question says, are good S? The next question says,
sir, please hold
yeah,
on for a second. Sir, which one, what sign will make it inferior?
yeah, I'm talking about substitute. You're talking about inferior.
Yes, you just said positive is substitute and then negative is complementary. So
Yes.
what will make it inferior?
Inferior, I didn't say inferior talks about price of the related good. I'm now coming to talk about inferior and normal goods. And I
Okay,
said
sir.
that we consider income.
Okay, sir.
So the
Thank you.
third question says, is good S a normal good or inferior good? So now come to your question, right? Is good S a normal good or inferior good? Okay. So we'll come here. So we'll look at the coefficient of income. If the coefficient of income is positive, then it's, you remember we said there's a positive relationship between normal good and income. So the coefficient is positive, then the good S is a normal good. If the coefficient is negative, then good S is an inferior good. Is it okay? Rossin, you are the one who asked the question.
Yes, sir.
If you consider
So
the
please repeat what you just said again.
huh?
Please repeat what you just said again.
Are you talking to me or you're talking to Rossin?
Please, you.
Okay. I said if you are talking about normal goods or inferior good, you look at the coefficient of income, okay? If the coefficient of income is positive, so the coefficient of income is +1, okay? +1 is positive, it's greater than 0, okay? So it means that good S is a normal good. If the coefficient is negative, then good S is an inferior good. Is it okay?
Okay. Yes, please.
And if you're talking about substitute, you don't come and look at income. If you're talking about substitute or complement, you look at the price of the related good. That's PY. Okay. The price of related good is positive. Good S and Y are substitutes. If it is negative, good S and Y are complements. If you're talking about normal good and inferior good, you look at income. You don't look at PS. If the coefficient of income is positive, normal good, negative, inferior good. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So the third question says, derive the demand curve for good S. So this one, the solution I have here is wrong. I had a mistake in it. I have to rectify that mistake first. So I will solve it in our whiteboard. Okay.
You said you make mistake and we did.
You said? What did you say? I feel like you also make a mistake. I'll mark you wrong.
Dog.
The mistake is just a typo mistake. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So to find the demand curve, hey, when you Rebecca.
Palm.
Yeah, some.
Dog.
So recall that the demand curve shows the relationship between quantity demanded of a good and the price of the good, all things being equal. So to find the demand curve, we just have to find the relationship between the price of the good and the quantity demanded of the good, all things being equal. So in effect, in order to find the demand curve, substitute for all explanatory variables except for the price of good S. So we just do like the way we are doing for this part, okay? So here we substitute for all exponential variables. But when you are finding the demand curve, you have to substitute for all exponential variables except the price of the good itself. So we substitute for PY, I, and A. We don't substitute for PS. Okay. So when we come here, we substitute for all exponential variables except for the price of good S. So we have QSD is equal to 1200 minus 3PS plus 4PY plus I plus 2A. So you are going to substitute for all exponential variables except for the price of good S. Okay. So substitute for PY, which is 15. We substitute for I, which is 1000. We substitute for A, which is 200. Okay. We don't substitute for PS. If you substitute for PS, you will not get a demand curve. You will get the quantity sold. Okay. If you substitute for PS, you get the A. So you substitute for all exponential variable except for PS. So this plus this plus this plus this is supposed to be 2,660. And I had 2,060. So that was the mistake I was talking about. Okay. So this plus this is 2,200 plus 400, 2,600 plus 60. So it is 2,660 minus 3 PS. So that would be your demand curve. Okay. So that was the mistake I was talking about. Okay. So that would be your demand curve. So if you make this mistake, I'll mark you for this. I'll mark you for so maybe I'll subtract some few like 0.5 from this one. Okay. So you're not going to.
Hey, dog.
It is mathematics, so we mark steps. Okay, we don't look at the final answer and mark you wrong. Okay, so you get like everything.
Okay.
Yeah, you lose some few marks. Not so the final answer mostly is just 1 mark. Okay, so if you get it wrong, instead of giving you 1 mark, we'll give you half. You get it? Yeah.
1 mark.
The final answer is 1 mark. Or the procedure is the one that takes all the mark. So if this is 3 marks, this will give you 2 marks, and the final answer will give you 1. Okay, so the last question was, so let me do this one so I can do. So that was a D, right? So we have QSD is equal to 1,200 minus Ade. Yeah, some I had them one or more. Or so we have I. Then we have 2, right? So here we substitute for all exponential variables except for PS. So since the demand curve shows the relationship between quantity demanded for the good and price the good, all things being equal. Okay, so we substitute, so we have, so we substitute PY was 20 or 15. PY is 15. This is 1,000 this is 200.
Sir, please, if you are typing, we cannot see you.
Okay, you can't see because I'm not sharing it. Oh, sorry.
So you're not seeing anything.
Okay, can you see now?
Yes, please.
So this plus this plus this plus this will give you
Yeah.
2,660. So this is our demand curve, right? This is our demand curve. And the last question was saying we should sketch the demand curve, okay? The last question was saying we should sketch the demand curve. So that's sketching the demand curve. So economists say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And we note that we have a linear demand curve. Okay, so we just need 2 points on the curve to sketch the demand curve. We just need 2 points on the curve to sketch the demand curve. Okay, so we need Q when S is equal to PS is equal to 0. Then we need P when QS is equal. So we just say when PS is equal to 0, when PS is equal to 0, we have, so we just substitute 0 in place of PS, okay? So we have QSD is equal to, so this is 0 here, right? So we have this to be 2660, okay? Then we just need the other one when QS is equal to 0. When QSD is equal to 0, we have, when QS is equal to 0, then we have, so we create this rather to be 0, okay? So this side is 0. We have a simple linear equation, right? So group lighting, so bring 3p here. So minus 3p, when it equals the equals, it becomes positive 3p, right? So we have 3ps here. Then this will be 0. So we are looking for ps. So we divide 2 by 3. We have ps will be equal to 2,660 divided by 3. And this is equal to, so this is equal to what?
88667.
886.67. Okay.
0.67.
So we have 2 points on the line. So we just draw a Cartesian plane, P on the vertical axis, Q on the horizontal axis. Then we have our demand curve. Okay. So this will be our demand curve. So there's a mistake here, so I'll have to rectify this before I send it to you. Faisal, before I send it to you, I have to do this. Okay. So here,
all right, dog.
Q is on the horizontal axis. So Q is equal to 2660, okay? Then P is equal to 886.67. So that will be our demand curve, okay? So next week, we'll continue with supply curve. And because supply and demand are mostly the opposite of the other, this one I'll move fast so that I'll be able to get to equilibrium, and we'll do more equilibrium. Then we'll solve an example and all these things. I'll try and solve an example. If I'm not able to finish next week, then we'll continue in 2 weeks time, because I have to do a full-blown example with you guys, okay, so that you appreciate what we're doing. Okay, we are not in a hurry to finish. It's better for you to get the concept than to finish and you don't get anything. And the one thing that I have to note is that, okay, so I'll give you one advice. After each class, you have to revise that class before you come to the next class, okay? Yes, don't wait till exams time before you go and sit down and say, I want to learn Managerial economics and get an A. You get an F, and I will gladly give you an F. Okay. Previously, I was. Let me stop recording. So, nothing I can imagine.